you. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Valdine Bjornsson, and I am going to walk us through a little presentation about getting ready for exams, our favorite thing. Now, before I begin, I got to get something. Okay. Sorry. Okay. All right. So reading-based exam preparation. So we'll just kind of get through this, and hopefully it'll help you out with your exams coming up, hopefully soon. Okay. So the first thing that we need to do when we're getting ready for exams, it maybe sounds like an obvious one, but it is really very, very important. It's what do you need to focus on, right? So, you have to decide which thing. I just thought I should put my mic on here. Which thing should we focus on, right? Now, of course, probably you should focus on the syllabus. The syllabus should be something that, basically on the very first day of class, you should be looking at that syllabus, right? And trying to figure out which things are more important than others. So some courses, of course, you're going to have to worry about your text. Some will focus on lecture only. Some will focus on the notes that you've taken in the lecture. And then sometimes you have courses that have PowerPoint slides or various types of reading that you have to do, like broad reading, besides just textbook reading. So you really need to make sure you ask the professor, if it's not clear in your syllabus, make sure you get that straight, because sometimes you go into a lecture, but the professor says, just read your text and you should be fine. So do that, right? Make sure you know where the weights are in terms of what's important to focus on for your study. Then the other thing is, this is all strategic, student things here. The next thing is obviously which exams are weighted more, right? So what percentage of each exam are you going to have, right? So it's surprising how little quizzes can add up, right? So if you have 2%, 5% for each little quiz, that adds up to a lot of percentage of your course grading. So then you need to spend time on those little quizzes. Don't think that it's just 2%, 5% here or there. Those things add up, and it can change your grade, right? Up to from a C to a B or something like that, right? And then, in this case too, you can also be strategic. So if you have a 50% exam, you better know what's going to be on the exam in terms of what you have to prepare for, right? So kind of going back to this, if I know most of my exam is going to be on a textbook only, and it's weighted at 50% of my grade, you better read that textbook, right? Really, really thoroughly, and know what the material is, right? As compared to if it's just lecture and notes with the PowerPoints, and it's likewise maybe graded a big number, you need to really focus on that. Okay. So don't waste your time on things that are not strategic in terms of what the syllabus is saying, what your professor is saying, and also how each, exam or quiz is weighted. You really need to know that. So that's a big picture thing. The other thing that you might know about, but I'm just going to do a little plug here. There's a lot of resources on campus. There's tutors on campus. There's workshops that you can take part in. You can also, this is not really about exams here, but you can also take part, access writing tutors that are also under accessibility services. And then the academic learning tutors. So those are one-on-one meetings that you can book with really, solid student tutors, right? So there's various things that you can do, right, in terms of getting prepped in general, but also you could get strategies for specific courses through the academic learning tutors. Okay. There's also, another thing you could do. I call this a book club, but it's more like a study group. So we had arranged prior, pre-COVID, let's say, we had book clubs or study groups that I was trying to arrange with specifically psychology and sociology. So if you're, looking for that kind of group kind of study opportunity where you're all reading the same textbook, but you're all reading it in your own space independently, which is fine. But if you also feel that you want to read it, but also talk about it with other students, then reach out to myself or to Indigenous Student Center, and we can certainly coordinate that for you. and find other students that might be interested in doing that. So the exam prep, so basically there's a few things that you can do that maybe are pretty basic in terms of like just getting ready. So what kind of exams are you going to have, right? Are you going to have multiple choice? Are they short answer, long answer? What are you going to be having, right? So in that case, sometimes now too, we have open book exams, right? So that's also an interesting thing to strategize for, right? If you can, sometimes with online books, there's old exams, but really, practice exams, right? So textbook tests or exams, take those. Don't think they're, just an extra thing in the textbook. That's excellent preparation. It's not a waste of time. It's not just an extra thing. Take those kinds of tests and exams that are offered or provided in those online textbooks that we seem to have more and more of. And then the other thing that sometimes you can have, like, it depends. Some students now do only have online access to textbooks, but pre-COVID, I found that there was less than that. It was mostly people had the physical books. But if you do have online access to textbooks, which seems that mostly a lot of students do have now, there should be exams in there. There should be notes, and there also could be flashcard resources, right? So practicing vocabulary, let's say. Okay. And then, the other thing, like I just mentioned, is know what kind of exam you're prepping for. Now that matters. If you're doing an essay as compared to a multiple choice or true and false. So multiple choice and true and false, exam type like questions are more about like broad reading, right? So you really do need to know probably more like specific vocabulary. You might need to know specific numbers or, specific, I don't know, whatever the content is, I'm not sure, but really specific things. Whereas the essay, it tends to be more about a broad understanding of something and applying something. So you're going to think about those kinds of questions in much different ways, right? An open book exam would be more, you read through the material. You might use sticky tabs. I would recommend sticky tabs, but that's not a plug for Post-it notes, but sticky tabs. And then, strategize that. So maybe, one particular area would be yellow sticky tabs for this kind of question. Blue sticky tabs would be that kind of question. So if you're in an open book exam, you can like be more efficient, right? You can go really, really, quickly through the open book exam, let's say. Okay. So you're kind of strategizing the physical part of what you're going to have to go through if it's an open book, right? And then, how many questions and how much time for the exam. So part of that though also is like, it doesn't really help you in terms of like, if I know there's going to be 5 questions on the exam, that's not going to really help me much more than if there's going to be 100 questions on the exam. Like, how is that going to help me? But it just in the idea of, you really need to know like what you're up against, sort of like more the mental kind of preparation, right? And how much time will you have to get through some of those questions? That again is more of that mental preparation, because part of that is, do you have the stamina, right? Do you have the stamina to get through that exam, right? So just get yourself ready and kind of mentally prepared for what you're going to be doing in the exam, okay? Okay, so coordinated reading. So what that means is a lot of times what students do is they do this notes here, then that's notes here, those notes there, and then there's just a flurry of paper everywhere on one course. And you might be doing 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know, courses, right? So try to keep your notes kind of in one location. What I tend to ask students to do is, if you have lecture notes, put your lecture notes kind of in the PowerPoint. Or the other way you could do it, if you're doing lecture notes, put those little points that you might have in the PowerPoint in the lecture notes. So you're either going to go refer to the lecture notes or the PowerPoint notes, right? In that sense, you're probably going to guess that I suggest that people do print up their PowerPoints. So it's a physical thing that you can kind of go through and arrange in your brain as you're reviewing, right? And if you layer on that textbook notes, so sometimes students have like 1, 2, 3 different places, and it's just, oh my gosh, like how do you keep track of all that information? So either, combine them all in one, or go through the separate locations of the notes, right? So let's say you have lecture notes in one spot, PowerPoints in one note, one section of your notes that you refer to, and then textbook notes. So let's say you just keep them all 3 separately. What you can do though, is maybe create another version of that. So it's more like a visual map of the big picture ideas, and you can color code again. I'm a big fan of visualizing things. So color coding, different concepts, right? Like one broad idea in my PowerPoints is connected to one broad idea, like let's say it's the color yellow in my lecture notes, and I'll highlight that section yellow. And then I'll go to my textbook notes and I'll say, okay, well, that section is related to the PowerPoint, is related to the lecture notes. That's all yellow. I'm going to color that yellow, let's say, like a highlight thing. Okay. And then take advantage of the textbooks. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them do have these things that are features in textbooks, which is they have summaries or questions at the beginning or the end of chapters. A lot of times students go next, right? We don't even pay attention to those. That's a really good check-in. So before you read the chapter, if you have those beautiful things, which is like pre-questions, like before you read the text or the chapter, I guess, ask yourself those questions. If you have no idea what those answers are, then that's a really good like message to you. Oopsie, I got to really read this chapter really, really well, right? And then when you finish reading it, go back to those same questions. Even if they're not questions, they might be a summary. So let's say you read that summary sentence of what's in the chapter and you go back after you've read it and you still go, oh my gosh, I have no idea what that means, or I cannot answer that question. Then, you know, you got to go back to that section and look at it again. That's a really, really good, think of it as a thermometer of whether you know your stuff in those chapters, right? So and that's a really good, like, don't forget the summaries and the questions at the beginning or end is the author's way of keeping you organized and focused, okay? So the author wants you to know that information. So they pull that information out. That's the big picture stuff. If you don't know the answers or you can't explain that summary point, you're in trouble because you don't know that information. So use that as a thermometer to know if you're actually reading it and understanding what's going on. You know, and then the other idea is get the big picture of all your exam prep sources. So that's kind of what I'm meaning here. So try to connect them by color coding them, let's say, or recreating them in one location of the big ideas. Or putting notes into certain other notes, right? So PowerPoint notes can go into lecture notes or something like that, right? So you're combining the notes. And prioritizing the reading just basically means, what did my professor or what does the syllabus maybe say? Am I going to be really tested on my lecture notes and the lectures, let's say? Then focus on that. But if my prof said, you know what, show up to class, but really I want you to really, really focus on the textbook, then prioritize that reading. Right? Okay. So this is another thing, and it kind of is related to the first one, but be active. So sometimes students come to me and they say, oh my gosh, I spent like 2 hours reading my textbook. I have no idea what happened in it. And I say to them, well, hold up, like, what were you doing? Well, I was just reading and highlighting and reading and highlighting. Okay, that's inactive. So what I mean by active is create some kind of visual representation. So kind of create sort of like, this is chapter 1. These are the points in chapter 1 that are important, and make sort of like a little bubble or spider web or however you vision that. And then just put the big ideas of that chapter there. So as you're reading it, you're doing something, right? You're creating a study guide, really. As you read it, you're going to create that study guide or that big picture of that chapter. And don't just waste time with general reading, right? Like, and I really do mean that. This is not take a book to the beach and relax with your reading, right? Preparing for an exam is not beach reading, okay? It's precision, like surgeon strategies to really specifically do what you need to do in the chapter, right? So do something that's going to help you with your study after. I find like highlights all over a textbook, not that helpful, right? But if you're reading it and you're creating sort of a secondary kind of visual map of that chapter, that's going to be super helpful for you when you go back to study. And don't just think you can cram. And I know that's like the favorite thing maybe to do, although hopefully not. But if you do, it's just like anything that you think that you've learned in life. You can't learn it. And that's, well, sometimes there are things that come naturally to us, but things that are deeper in our memory are learned over time. Okay, so try to do this prep. Now it's kind of later already in the term, but really the whole preparing for an exam. And listen to this, the preparing for an exam starts on the first day of class. So if you've been doing these visual representations, if you've been looking at the summary questions at the beginning or the question, the questions at the end of the chapter, all the way through from day 1, you've been preparing for your exam, right? So studying over time doesn't mean cramming. It means getting your notes in order so that you can more efficiently study for the exam, right? So, but revisiting over, if you can do that, like over time, is really, really important, instead of like, 5 hours before you write the exam, right? Yeah. And the other thing is, if you're having a hard time with, let's say you read this chapter and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea, right? Ask your professor, are there websites that can explain this concept a little bit clearer? Is there I don't know, another source of information that I can just look at just to give me some other broader understanding of various things? They will have, different, hopefully they'll have different ideas for you. But certainly, I have with students when they met with me, I've had fairly good luck. We've had to kind of, weed out the things that are kind of, not the best. But there usually are some really good, there can be some good content if you know which websites to look at. So that's why I would ask your professor about videos maybe you can watch, reading broadly, like not always a textbook, right? Something else. Like if you're taking a course, we're going to assume that you're a little bit interested in the content. So read about it a little bit more outside of just what the textbook offers, right? And that would be very helpful in terms of an exam, because remember, the exam is about your knowledge. It's not necessarily just like remembering a definition. How do you understand that concept is really, hopefully, what the exam is going to test as well. This is just an idea of being active, right? Being active when you're reading. So the idea here is, having some kind of visual thing going on as you're reading your textbook or preparing for your exam. So examples are like concept maps, and I think I have, maybe I don't, but maybe I'll pull up some examples right away here. So concept maps are one thing. I'm just going to Google it as we're talking. And, spider maps, that's just basically bubbles, right? So you have, like, I'll show you here, you have bubbles basically for this. Let's see if I can go here real quick. Yeah, so I'll just share this, my screen. So you can see, these are kinds of the bubble kinds of things, right? So you're kind of creating a network. And then if you're doing that, use a form or just create your own visual. Like, so you can print this up, but literally you don't have to. You can just, write something in the middle and start drawing your lines to the different ideas. If you need to, though, if you want a quick reference, write the page number, right? Write down the text name if you have various things that you're reading. Make sure you have a reference there. To be able to refer back, because you might go, oh my gosh, I wrote that down like a few months ago in September, and I have no idea, what that is. You'll have an easy reference to get to, right? Adding bold words. Now, that's part of the surgery type reading that you need to do, right? So precision reading in the sense that look for those words that are bolded. Again, the author is giving you a hint. They're saying, like this is like a bold word, flashing light here. Pay attention to that word and really know it, because it's obviously a key idea. And then, yeah, you obviously compare it to different readings, chapters, lectures, and PowerPoints. Kind of what I said here in terms of, what you can do. Try to combine everything in one area, right? So there's a lot. If you like literally Google graphic organizers, you're going to get a ton of different things. This is just to give you an idea of how you can organize your notes. Certainly you don't have to print this up, right? But it's just an idea of how you could organize your notes. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's go back to here. All right. So Cornell Notes, basically what that is, and maybe I'll find a visual of that right now. So Cornell Notes is, really just about, making detailed notes, I guess is what I would say. But let me see if I can find an example of it here. Hopefully that'll come up first. Okay. All right. So, so the idea is, and I'll just share the screen again here. Okay. So, basically, what it's doing, and this is a very, very, kind of general way to explain it, but, basically you're going to, draw a line about 1/3 on your page, like, it doesn't really matter, but, give yourself kind of a few different zones on your paper. So this is basically that big areas where you're going to, you're going to write your notes on the right side. So that's kind of like as you're listening to the lecture or as you're reading your textbook, you're writing your notes here. And then on this left side, this is Q column. I mean, you can do kind of whatever you want, but my point would be to write questions here. So as you're taking your notes, maybe you just take your notes and you look back after you've done the reading or after you've listened to the lecture, and you start asking questions. Okay, what was this? Why was this? What happened when, whatever, all those different questions that you could test yourself on afterwards. And then, basically at the bottom here, you could have a summary section. I mean, I'm not sure if you really need it, but that's the formal way, let's say, of doing the Cornell note taking. You kind of have these 3 different sections. But the idea is you're going to take your notes and then you're going to ask yourself questions. The green zone is really about you testing yourself, right? Holding yourself accountable, basically, because what you're going to do is you're going to cover up that side, or I guess cover up the note-taking side, and then ask yourself those questions and see if you can come up with the answers, right? So it's a way for you to test yourself, right? And it is really, really effective because, again, you're kind of doing that summary version, and then you come up with the questions, right? All right, so Bubble Us is a website. I don't know if, I think just about every student that I see, I literally always go to this website. First, I like it because it's free. So that's the first reason. But certainly it's a really cool little website. And I'm just going to find an example of it here. So let's see if I can find one that's kind of easy to look at. They can get really complicated. So I'm not going to show you these in detail in that sense, but it's just another idea of, this is an online version of what I'm talking about in terms of, what you could do. So this was what is politics. So there's different points that were in his headings or her headings, and she wrote these down. And then we kind of went further and we added the bold words in here. And this is a chapter, right? So I can look at this now. I haven't ever studied political theory or whatever this class was, but certainly I can go through these bubbles here and kind of talk about the chapter based on what I see, right? Not that I'll know a lot about it in that sense, but certainly if you're going to hold yourself accountable, this Bubble Us website is pretty cool. Again, you can recreate it with a pen on paper, but the point is, if I'm looking at this and I'm studying, I should be able to, if I know the material, I should be able to talk myself or whoever I'm talking to, the mirror or something like that. I should be able to explain all these points, right? And if I can't, let's say if I get to this particular spot here, political questions, I can't remember what political systems and power and authority talked about. I better go back to the chapter and look that over, right? So this is a great testing technique as well, okay? And you can, like it says here, you can have 3 different ones, but literally I've got tons of them in one in each of my free Bubble Us, right? And you can say them as you go, you can print them and all that. So, you can move them around and change the colors and all that. So if you're that kind of person, you like that kind of organization on a program, then that's a good one for you to try. All right. Okay. And then, make it memorable. So I've already talked about colors. But analogies, like an example would be, and this is a silly one because we all know what veins are, but veins, you could say it's an analogy is more like veins are like garden hoses. So when I write the definition of veins, I'm going to draw a garden hose just to remind myself what that is. That's just a silly one. But it really, analogies are really like an example that makes sense to me, something that I already understand, to help me with the definition of a vein or whatever, right? So an analogy is just like an example, but something that is more physical, that I can actually feel and see maybe. So you have to be a little creative, which is good because your brain likes things that are novel. Your brain likes things that are a little bit different and funny and interesting. You'll remember those things a lot better. Colors also help. So I already mentioned that a little bit in terms of color coding your notes across different sources. I kind of mentioned this too in terms of, a garden hose, let's say, but, pictures and images are really important. If you can incorporate those, not for everything, but certainly for things that, oh my gosh, I'm never going to remember this. Like literally it's not staying in my brain. Get an image that kind of creates a memory for you of certain things, right? And I already mentioned the sticky tabs and color coding, but it also, is really good in terms of if you got this humongous textbook that you're supposed to be preparing for the exam, it can help you kind of navigate, like, how do I get here? Oh, that's the sticky tab there. That's what that means there. So it almost summarizes certain sections for you. So as you're reviewing your textbook, you have these main points on the sticky tabs that kind of flash in front of you because it's literally something that's, on a sticky tab, right? So you'll see it a lot better. and keep it simple. Like you can see on this bubble us, I'm literally writing hardly anything, right? There's hardly any words. I have a few phrases, but it's the point of note taking shouldn't be write every single word on the page and copy it directly from the textbook. I mean, wow, no, right? That's not, you're not going to be able to study efficiently that way. Pick the most important ideas, headings, subheadings, and bold words. And paying attention to the colors that are in your textbooks, because authors in really good textbooks, which I see quite a few really good textbooks, they're giving you those little cues to say, the blue is the big heading. The orange is the heading under the blue big heading, right? The bold words are in black. So pay attention to those, right? So they're helping you. They're trying to help you get through that textbook, okay? All right, but keep it simple. Write down just certain words. Okay. And then I guess the obvious one is flashcards. Now, this is going to depend on the kind of exam you're doing, but I would say if you're doing multiple choice, if you're doing true and false, sorry, but you might have to go to flashcards. Now, flashcards are fun. Okay. So let's say you don't like getting the dollar store flashcards. You can get the recipe cards, right, for real cheap. I'm just seeing if I can log into my little Quizlet here. Most of you, I think, know what Quizlet is, so I'm not going to go over it too much, but I'm just going to show you real quick if you don't. So let's do, I got one here called Film Studies. All right, so I had no idea film studies would have such technical terms, but they do. So the nice thing about these kinds of programs, and this is free again, so if you don't know, then here's an example. But let's say I created one already. So add or remove, I don't know, let's just come up with something. I have no idea what would be film studies, but let's do bacteria. Like it's totally not related to film studies, but I can't think of a term that would be related to film studies in this second. Let's do bacteria. So let's say it came up. So after like 3 letters, you see, I can click on bacteria, or 2 letters actually came up, right? Then Quizlet automatically has definitions of people who've done it before. So you're just going to steal their definition, boom. And then I'm going to hit image, right? And I'm going to go, which one looks the best? I think that one, right? So there, you got your next flashcard in like what, 5 seconds? So I only had to type 2 letters, and I have the term, I have the definition, and I have the visual. So, and then you can go to an automatic, done, then you can start studying it right away, right? So wherever bacteria is here, and there's my, definition, right? And you can get into little games if you're really getting bored of just reviewing. They have the definition. Here's my definition for bacteria. I can't see it, it's right there. Here's my game, right? So you can play games like that. The other thing with Quizlet is it gives you, if you really need another option, it gives you a test. Oh gosh, let's see here. I don't know. Oh, here, options. Okay. So I don't want to do written. I never recommend you doing written because you literally have to do exactly what it has, which I don't think you really need to. But you can click off matching, multiple choice, and true and false, right? Term, answer with term or definition. Well, we'll do both. Like it doesn't really matter. And then create the new test. So it right away gives you these, let's say false here, these test options. Student only observe behaviorism, maybe, I don't know. So, it goes through kind of a simulation of possibly what your exam could be like. So Quizlet, I really, really do like it. But you can go like low tech and just go to the dollar store, or I shouldn't say that, maybe go to a store and get your recipe cards and just write on them. But then the best part is once you've done your cards, maybe you've done your little definition, throw them up in the air and match them. Match them according to concept, match them according to maybe where they fit in the chapter, match them according to the idea or whatever, right? So that's a good way to use flashcards, and Quizlet is certainly you can print out Quizlet cards as well, right? All right, and I guess I've already mentioned Quizlet. And then Chegg is, I don't know, like Chegg I haven't gone to in a while, so I'm not sure if it's still a live one or not. That's just another kind of option for studying. Yeah, so you might find these kinds of websites interesting. I'm not going to go there with you right now because it would depend on what your subject is and what you want to do. But Chegg might be a nice option for you in terms of reading broadly and using other kinds of options for to understand your topic, right? So anytime you spend on task, that's going to be time that you're preparing for your exam, right? Wolfram is the same thing. So you might want to look at that. It's called Wolfram. And it also has these topics, again, pretty broad. But again, if you're preparing for an exam and you're kind of tired of looking at your notes, go broad and see if you actually can answer some of those questions. I mean, for a little bit of a brain break, maybe. And then just see, okay, I really didn't know that answer. Oopsie, that's on my exam. I better go to my textbook again and study that area, right? So it'll give you, a different way of looking at the material and help you to see if you need to do a little more, reading, right, in your textbook or from your notes or whatever. So again, if you're doing exam prep, I kind of have been going about on that already. So I said, throw your flashcards in the air and regroup them. That's really, really important for your brain. Different kinds of connections for the same material. Draw the concept map. So let's say you have done that bubble us thing and you've studied it and it's kind of, let's see if I can find it here. If I can get back to it, but you could, recreate your little spider map, right, of your textbook. Or talk out loud. I mean, this is something that people do a lot. We just go, oh, be quiet, I'm studying. Say it out loud. Speak it out loud. Explain it to yourself. Doesn't matter if it sounds or feels funny. Speak it out loud, because the more you hear the material coming out of your mouth, you're hearing it in your own ear, it's going to help you with your long-term memory with this, okay? And then again, study and rehearse and study and rehearse. So you're going to study and rehearse, and then you're going to study and rehearse again. Okay. Hold yourself accountable. Do I really know this? Could I actually recreate that bubble us, right? That concept map of this chapter? Could I? Did I really know what that term actually meant? And recreate it, right? So like I said, recreate the flashcards, throw them up in the air and have fun joining them again, or draw the bubble us or draw your concept map and see if you can figure it out. Have somebody listen to you and let's say they go through the flashcards with you, or they go through your bubble us, or they go through all your yellow sticky tabs and say, well, that's your yellow sticky tab. What's that related to? Here's the word. How is it related to the other yellow sticky tab? Right? So you can get someone to kind of ask you those kinds of things. Well, I like to call this wall art, but people go, are you crazy? Wall art is basically just throwing all your sticky tabs up that you felt were important ideas and putting them somewhere where you're always looking. Maybe you're, I don't know, on your mirror, or I don't know, in your bathroom, bedroom wall or something. And then you have those ideas in front of you all the time and kind of go to it physically, right? And like I always said, talk out loud. Okay, well, I wanted to make sure I finish in about 30 minutes. So hopefully that helps you a little bit in terms of exam prep, and take care, everybody. My name is Valdine Bjornson, and I'm a reading specialist with McGizzy Agamic. So contact me if you'd like to hear more information. Thank you very much.